We are live, or so it says. And this is not Jeff Erickson live. Jeff is returning from Ireland on a wonderful trip he had with his family. I've been asked to pinch hit on the Thursday Industry podcast and decided who else from the industry should I ask to talk a few minutes to our good friend Brian Walton from the Cardinal Nation, helps me out with Creative Sports. Brian and I don't get to talk a lot. And when we do, it's usually because there's somebody in one of our leagues that we have an issue to deal with. So it's nice to talk to Brian on a more informal basis for a change. How you doing, my friend?
Yeah, it's good to be here, Todd. And, it's there's a level of comfortability when you're, dealing with someone that you've known for a couple of decades now and have been through the ups and downs and ins and outs. And that's the way I feel with you, Todd. So it's a pleasure to be on here. I would have come even if I was busy. I would have changed my schedule because I owe you. I owe you a lot for what you've done for me over the years.
It's mutual, my friend. Actually, I didn't even realize this until just now. You say you're busy. You're not headed this way for the weekend, are you?
No, actually, I just got back from the Midwest. I actually spent the night before last in O'Hare Airport, which was not a great way to spend a night. I spent it in a wheelchair that I found to sleep in. But that's a different story for a different day.
Okay. Yeah, no, the reason I asked, I think folks probably realize Brian's a big St. Louis Cardinals fan, and the Cardinals are heading to Fenway Park this weekend.
And I had a decision whether I was going to go up there and work, but what I decided was it was an easy decision. My oldest son, who lives in Southern Mass, said, "How about I take you to the game on Father's Day?" And I said, "Okay." So I'm going to go sit in the stands and watch the Cardinals Red Sox this weekend as a fan. Going to enjoy it.
So you are coming up over the weekend.
I will. Good. Yes, I will.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Unfortunately, I worked on the weekends, so I even if I wanted to go and because it's such a great series to watch, I couldn't. But anyway,
I have a series of stock stories that I tell that illustrate different things, and the one about you when you were driving Uber during the playoffs for the Red Sox is one of my go-to stories.
Yeah, how I pretty much got let go from the company because I refused to change. You're supposed to what? You're supposed to let it was actually Lyft.
All right, Lyft. Sorry about that.
Yeah, let's not disparage Uber. Yeah, but right. The only job I was ever I was fired for one other job, but that's beside the point. Yeah, no, you're supposed to let the customer choose the station, but the Sox were playing Detroit in the playoffs in 2013, and no, we weren't changing the channel, and I got a low rating, and my overall rating fell below what was needed to stay. So I was asked. They didn't fire me. They just said, don't bother showing up for any more assignments. So
yeah, that's like when I worked in the corporate world, we never fired anybody. We just had resource actions. It somehow makes you feel better that you're let go as a result of an action versus a firing.
Actually, you know what? The other time I was air quote fired was with Biogen. It was in a contract. It was a temporary position, and they too just said we renew this every 3 weeks. We're just not going to renew it. So.
Yeah, and you felt so much better that way, right?
Yeah. So, and that actually was the impetus for me getting into the industry full time. But you don't do this well. You do this full time now, Cardinals Nation. But tell the folks a little bit because we have a mutual friend who brought you into the industry. How did how long ago and when did you break in, and what was that all about?
Yeah, I like a lot of people began playing fantasy baseball back in the 90s, and I discovered fantasy sports as a way to compete on even ground with my brother-in-law, who's 5 years younger than me and 4 inches taller and outweighs me. And basically anything athletic, he would just regularly wipe the floor with me. But I found that fantasy sports was a way that I could compete with him and succeed. And so I kind of liked it. And then I got involved in some of the early the games where I was playing basketball and all kinds of things, making a little money here and there. And I, like everybody, would then go to the fledgling internet to try to gather information about what's going on. And I was going to a particular site and getting some fantasy information that I really didn't agree with. So I wrote the proprietor and told him that I thought he was full of shit politely and why. Can I say that on here?
Yeah. Liz used to do this. You're all good.
Okay, good. So he said, okay, well, fine. If you think you can do better, why don't you write for us? So I did, and I started to write, and that led me to through a merger of sites to Creative Sports, where I met Laura Michaels, who are our late partner, who of course a Fantasy Sports Writer Hall of Fame member and a legend, a true legend in our industry. And I, like you did, Todd, hit it off very well with Lar, personally and professionally. He gave me lots of opportunity to begin to write about fantasy on a more regular basis. Then through the site, there's a writer who is still with Creative Sports today, like I am, Mark Meltzer, who focuses primarily on football. Mark Meltzer happens to live in the Jupiter, Florida area, which is where the St. Louis Cardinals and the Marlins have their spring training base. And just as coincidence would have it, one of Mark Meltzer's neighbors was the Cardinals media relations director. And this is, of course, pre 9/11 and, everything else. And, I managed to kind of get in through the back door and realize that, hey, being a semi-legitimate member of the news media was kind of fun. And I had followed the Cardinals since I was a child. I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, which is, most people know, is the home of the College World Series. But it was also Cardinals country, because at that point in time, the A's had moved away. The Royals didn't exist. So the Cardinals were the team in the Midwest that everybody from Arkansas to Iowa followed. Bob Gibson was from there, from Omaha, my hometown as well. So I'd always followed the Cardinals. And I sort of merged this writing about fantasy sports and interest in the Cardinals to writing about the Cardinals as well. And I found that writing about a major league team is interesting and all, but there's a lot of competition. The local newspaper, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, has multiple writers and columnists covering the team. Of course, now The Athletic has beat writers. MLB.com has beat writers. So there's no way to really differentiate your product and make any money. So for me, I found out pretty quickly that the minor leagues were the way to, were the niche that I could use to have a successful business. And we at the Cardinal Nation follow the system. We have reporters in every minor league affiliate town, because, of course, I can't be everywhere all the time. And we cover the Cardinals players from cradle to grave, all 243 of them in the system, not just the major leaguers. So, and it's news information primarily. Certainly there's some commentary as well, but it's a fun job. I spent 30 years in the corporate world as well and retired from that. So what I do now is write about baseball full time and go to games and watch them on TV and the internet. And it's a pretty good life. I enjoy it.
No, absolutely. Now, let the folks know the URL for the site. You've got some subscription content as well.
Yeah, it's called The Cardinal Nation. And if you don't use the at the beginning, you'll get to a site that sells cheap t-shirts. So you don't want to go there. So thecardinalnation.com. And you'll see some amount of free content and some amount of fee content. And for the same price that we've had since 2005, you can subscribe annually and get access to everything that we provide. We break down every transaction, every move. I do prospect rankings. I re-rank the top 50 prospects in the system every month. In fact, the article is probably going to go up tomorrow for June. And just extensive. We have new content, original content on the St. Louis Cardinals and their system 365 days a year. No BS. Christmas, New Year's, my birthday, doesn't matter. There's new content up every morning.
Now, when did I know I met Lar at the First Pitch Arizona? It was the November before Albert Pujols' rookie season, because I remember Albert Pujols debuting in the Arizona Fall League. You didn't come that year, did you?
I did not.
No,
I did not. I came about a year or two after.
Right. So that's when we would have met. But was that the first time you met Lar? Was it First Pitch? I mean,
yes.
In person? Yeah.
Yes, it was. And that became a First Pitch Arizona. And folks are probably familiar with that conference that occurs every October. Maybe it's November this year, don't know. But a wonderful conference put on by the folks at Baseball HQ in collaboration with USA Today. Multiple days of talk and presentations, as well as going to Arizona Fall League games. So it's really an excellent event. And a lot of the industry people go, and a lot of very, very knowledgeable fans go, and we talk baseball and have a great time. And I always look forward to that time, because I'm from, I told you I grew up in the Midwest. I live on the East Coast now, as do you, Todd. And Laura, of course, is a West Coaster. So there weren't lots of opportunities to run into one another at the supermarket or the gas station or wherever it may be. So those industry conferences were always tremendous, not only for the baseball knowledge and stuff, but the camaraderie, the people that you meet, and the friendships that you really can strengthen. So
if you weren't sure, it's the first weekend in November, and the schedule for AFL came out yesterday, and we're going to see the Fall Stars game again on Saturday, but on Friday there's a home run derby this year.
Yeah, I saw that. Now they didn't come out with a detailed game schedule, did they?
No, not that I'm aware, because I'm selfishly hoping there's games on Friday afternoon and then the home run derby at night.
So Friday, November 4th at Sloan Park is a home run derby, and then Saturday, November 5th is a Fall Stars game. And I imagine, I don't know this for a fact, but I would imagine both will be televised on MLB Network. At least I hope so. And
both will be within walking distance from the site hotel.
Yeah, even better.
We're back at the same hotel. The other, just for the folks that are interested, there's a triple header at Chase Field this year for the AFL. I hope that gets some coverage. And they're extending the playoffs. I think there's a semifinal round. So hopefully these are all vehicles, as Brian suggests, to get the AFL a little bit more coverage, which would be really nice. But yeah, we get to go out and check out the fall and a home run derby. That should be fun. Not that there won't be any side bets in the stands.
No, I'm sure
for the
not.
Home run derby.
No, it's all for entertainment value only, of course.
Yeah, no.
But one of the good things that Major League Baseball did do with the Arizona Fall League, traditionally it had started in mid-September, shortly after the minor league seasons ended, and now that the AAA schedule has been extended to basically coincide with the MLB schedule, because without the expanded rosters that they used to have in September, major league teams need to have AAA still playing, so they have guys to call up when there's injuries during the last month. So they keep AAA playing. So, a lot of the guys that would have gone to the AFL are still active. So they decided, okay, we're going to wait and start the AFL at the beginning of October and play up until the week before Thanksgiving.
I seem to have lost Brian. I don't know if the feed itself has been lost, but I lost you there. Are you back?
Yeah. I don't know what happened. The screen went blank there for a moment.
All right. Well, you were. If I don't know if it was my end or yours. If you froze on my end, so
I'll pick it up where I was. So what I was saying was this change that they made to start the Arizona Fall League at the beginning of October and then run it until the week before Thanksgiving makes a lot of sense, both for availability of players, but also for visibility of the Arizona Fall League, which has been sort of this unknown jewel. And I wouldn't say unknown, but relatively unpublicized jewel. And every year, the number of players who participate in the AFL who go on to make a difference in the major leagues is significant, and pretty much every single year. And so, it's really a good place to go to see a lot of prospects in a limited time in a consolidated metropolitan area, in this case, the Phoenix area.
No, absolutely. I try to get down a little bit before and or a little bit after. So when you were taking the schedule, I've been waiting for it to come out because I need to know when I'm going to book my flights, because I don't know if I'm staying before or
exactly.
after the schedule.
Yeah.
That sort of thing there. So much looking forward to it. So let's turn a little bit to baseball for the next segment, if you will. But before we do, let's get a quick note from our sponsor. Okay, we're back. Baseball the rest of the time. You mentioned, Brian, you're a Cardinals fan, you Cardinals aficionado. We talked a little bit before. I wanted to make sure you saw it so I didn't hang out to dry. But that Nolan Gorman play was a Tuesday night. I didn't catch it live, so I didn't get my gut reaction, if you will. I read about it. But explain to the folks the situation in the game and then what rookie Nolan Gorman did, if you will.
Yeah. So the Cardinals, 2 outs with the bases loaded, and I believe it was Paul Goldschmidt that was at the plate. Nolan Gorman was the runner at third base. The other runners, Edmond Sosa was one, and then I can't remember who was in front of him.
Gorman was at first, right?
Yeah, Gorman was at first. I think Sosa was second, maybe Molina or somebody was at third. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So Goldschmidt hit a weak grounder on the infield that came to the second baseman, and there was going to be what obviously would have been the third out of the inning was a force out at second base. And what normally happens in such a play is that the runner has to slow down, and so he slides. Well, in this case, the runner Gorman did not slow down and slide. He kept on running right through the base as if he was going to try to take third. This confused the second baseman, who, instead of throwing to first base to get the easy out before Goldschmidt got to first, started to chase Gorman and got him in a rundown. Well, what that enabled the runner at third was then able to score before the third out was made in the inning. And actually the runner on second then tried to score. He was eventually thrown out. But the point is that by that heads up play, Gorman was able to extend the inning and enable the runner on third to score, when normally if the second baseman can't get the runner sliding into second, you turn around and throw to first. But that didn't happen in this case. And immediately the Cardinals, I was listening to the Cardinals telecast, the Cardinals play-by-play broadcaster, Dan McLaughlin, before Gorman, even got to thirds, said, hey, this is a play that they work on. So this was not a move that Gorman just made off the top of his head. This is a play that they taught them in a particular case with runners in scoring position, 2 outs, run through the base, don't slide. And, Gorman got a lot of credit being a rookie, being able to do that. But frankly, he's just up from the minor league system, and they drill these plays into the minor leaguers as well. And so, he might have been fresher. It might have been fresher in his mind to say a Paul Goldschmidt who's been in the major leagues for 10 years.
Yeah, it's one of those things you got to think through, in that if they force him at second, the run doesn't count. But as soon as he's safe at second, it takes away all forces, and the runner at third scores regardless of what else happens. That run now counts.
That's right.
If this becomes a routine play, the way to combat it is just throw to first.
And that's what, of course, in hindsight, he should have done. But for whatever reason, the surprise of the fact that he kept running, was enough to buy that time.
And of course, people on Twitter, they can't just enjoy the play. They have to start arguing whether Gorman if he had slid, he would have been safe anyway. And it would have been, man, it was just you can't think that far through. Okay? I mean, you're going to take the sure run, right? And that, to me, that was just, it reminded me of Bill Belichick coaching for certain scenarios, catching or fielding a kickoff with 1 foot out of bounds means the ball comes out to the 40, things like that are just coached. I think it's the fact you tell us that it was coached in the minor leagues. I think that's fantastic. I was more impressed that a rookie had the wherewithal to do it. What's he been there? Less than a month with the big club?
Yeah.
And yet you do, but wow, that's quite a thing. I don't who knows if it'll become a thing. I do think, you can argue that Goldschmidt would have been safe at first, that maybe the only play was second base.
Well, and Goldschmidt, and folks who play fantasy know, in his younger days, Paul Goldschmidt was a double-digit stolen base guy.
Yeah.
He still has a very, very high success rate. He doesn't run as much as he used to as he's in his 30s. But, he's a very good baser. It wasn't like it was Yadier Molina or Albert Pujols chugging down to first.
Right.
But the point is, it was a smart play, and it's, the Cardinals traditionally have been a good enough team that they don't draft in the first half of the draft, and they, through good teaching, good scouting, of course, but also good teaching, bring guys up, and they traditionally outperform, not everybody, but traditionally outperform the expectations that were put in place for them. I mean, you look at a Brennan Donovan who's up right now, is a great example, or Tommy Edmond. Nobody heard of Tommy Edmond 3 or 4 years ago, and now he's one of the highest value players in the game with his combination of defense and steals and all the things he does. So the Cardinals do a good job in player development, and it shows in their consistent, positive record over the years.
Donovan looks to be a decent average hitter. Are we going to get any productions, stolen bases, home runs from Donovan?
No, probably not. Probably not. I mean, he was a 300 hitter in the minor leagues, so I knew he could hit. I knew he could play multiple positions, but I didn't think he was going to be as good as he is, to tell you the truth. But he's a guy who, and that's the cliches about the work ethic and all that. But when guys like Goldschmidt go out of their way to talk about being impressed with how a rookie carries himself, that has a lot of gravity with me, a lot of weight. And Brendan Donovan is getting rave reviews, not only for his play, but also, how he goes about it to squeeze every bit of effort out of him. I don't know that he's going to be a starter long-term, but he's a super sub kind of guy, much like Edmond was his first couple years in the majors. And he looks like he's going to be here to stay. And
it looks like, I think it was either Donovan or somebody else has, at least in 5-game fantasy, he's eligible first, second, third, short, and the outfield.
Yeah, which again, those types of guys who are good are few and far between.
Right. I mean, he's kind of like a Stephen Kwan in that nice average, but not much else. However, being able to put him anywhere you want and improve your lineup in the other spots, I think he's more valuable than Stephen Kwan on a fantasy basis. But
you have to be prepared because of the injuries that invariably hit. You can't predict them. Rosters are never big enough. You can have reserves at every position. So a guy like Brennan Donovan can buy you a lot, and are often undervalued in drafts. By the way, that multi-position availability is not something that's really sexy on draft day, but over the long haul of a season, it really tends to pay off.
Yeah, no, for sure. And one of the reasons Brendan Donovan's up is because Paul DeJong isn't.
That's right. And Paul DeJong is a guy who, when he first came up, had a tremendous rookie year, showed a lot of power. He was a third baseman. He was drafted as a third baseman, and traditionally a power position, and so provided very, very good production. Showed he could handle shortstop. He's not an all-star defender. He won't make anybody forget about Ozzie Smith, but he's a competent defender at shortstop. And with a guy with power, you'd say, hey, that's a pretty nice profile. But what's happened is every year his performance has dropped to the point where this year he was just in the depths of despair, and they really had no choice. He was just, 10 days or so short of 5 years of MLB service time, which is a major junction in terms of being able to send guys down and not being able to send them down.
Right.
So the Cardinals have a little bit of a decision. DeJong he's had a couple of good stretches in AAA where he's played well. He's had a couple of stretches where he hasn't played well. Ideally, they would want to bring him up and enhance his value before they try to trade him. They need pitching, so he would be a good candidate to trade for pitching. The question is, he's got a contract for another year. That's a fairly high not a terrible contract, but a contract that's more than his value right now. Do the Cardinals trade him for 50 cents on the dollar at AAA, or do they try to bring him up to major leagues and get 75 cents on the dollar? Don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's Paul DeJong, so I don't know if it's maybe a small case L that I'll take on him. I thought I had him for a rebound. Some of the underlying numbers, although I didn't know they were going to use a ball that sprouts little parachutes on it. And he needs, he hits these fly balls that need all the help they can get, and he's not getting them. So I did not know that coming in. That's a shame. You mentioned the AFL. Maybe you weren't surprised, but I think one of the surprises was Juan Yipiz last year.
I play in several National League formats, Tout Wars and Labor. And in both those drafts, I came in wanting to get Nolan Gorman because I knew Nolan Gorman was going to be up not far. And when Nolan Gorman's prices got up in the $6-8 dollar range, I said, okay, well, maybe I'm not going to get him. So I picked up Juan Yipiz for $1. And, I knew that his power potential, he was a guy, interestingly enough, Juan Yipiz from Venezuela, came up in the Braves organization, was traded to the Cardinals in the first time they traded Matt Adams away, which was, 2017, something like that. And he Yipiz just languished in the Cardinals minor league system, really didn't do much. But something happened in that year off in 2020 where he got serious about weight training and his approach to the game, and came back in 2021 and had just a tremendous season. He was a player of the year in the Cardinals system, just dominated at AA, went to AAA, dominated there, then went to the Arizona Fall League, played there as well. And Juan Yipiz was a guy that I thought would make the team out of camp. He didn't. He had a bad spring training. He didn't perform well. But when he came up, he got a chance and has played well. But now the Cardinals have a roster challenge in that Cory Dickerson, who they signed in the offseason, is now starting his minor league rehab. And when Dickerson comes back, Yipiz could be the odd man out because certainly they're not going to send down Brendan Donovan. So, but Yipiz is a guy who he's not a fielder. He's a guy that definitely benefited by the National League adopting the designated hitter. He's had to play some outfield, but and he's been a first baseman, a third baseman, but he's really in his best positions is frankly his DH.
Now, how many pitchers are the Cardinals carrying? Because they're cutting down pitchers soon, so maybe he just replaces whatever pitcher the Cardinals send down. Yeah,
the Cardinals have been going 13 and 13.
Oh, so they haven't.
They're ready. They're ready for that. The Cardinals have had so much trouble with their rotation and all. You'd think they would have carried more pitchers, but the reality is they're carrying Albert Pujols, who really should not play against anybody but left-handed pitching. He should not play against right-handed pitching. And then they had Dickerson as well, so their bench is kind of limited in what flexibility they had. Then they have Edmond Sosa, who has no minor league options, who's the backup middle infielder. So, they hadn't really had a lot of flexibility with their roster.
Yeah, but Pujols can pitch too, right?
Yeah, only in St. Louis do fans think it's not an embarrassment for position players to be on the mound. For me, it's like you're waving the white flag. But Pujols and Molina both think it's a lot of fun. I think Molina's had 2 shots on the mound now. Pujols only had 1, so I'm sure he's bugging the manager for another chance to go out there.
It's a story for another day. To me, it's a complete joke and an embarrassment and a farce. And we're talking a little bit on Twitter. It just drives me crazy. So, but anyway,
let's face it, money makes the world go round, and this is all about roster sizes could and should be bigger, and they're not, because it costs money for players to be on major league rosters. But yet, teams who manipulate the number of moves of players up and down are being shackled by only 5 options per year, and at some point, something's going to give. Teams are going to get to September and they're going to be out of eligible guys to call up. And, it's just, and important games are going to get impacted by these artificial rules that have been put in place to do whatever, I guess, to save money.
Right. Yeah. I mean, on one hand, you force the pitcher to go 3 batters. On the other hand, I don't know. It's a story for another day. Watching the games as I do, as I'm sure you do. It's all right. Yeah. I giggled. It was fun to see Pujols, but watching guys throw 45-mile-an-hour lollipops, it's just not fun. It's a farce, and I don't like the Ghost Runner, and I don't like the 45-mile-an-hour lollipops. But
the other thing that bothers me, Todd, and this was a decision that was made again to save money, and it was made at the same time as they increased rosters from 25 to 26. So when they increased rosters from 25 to 26, that means, hey, our payroll costs went up, and a lot of times that last player is an older player who maybe make a little more money. So at the same time, what they did was they said, okay, instead of up to 15 guys being added in September, meaning from the 25-man roster to the total 40-man roster, all those guys conceivably would be eligible to be called up in September. They said, okay, we're going to stop that. We're only going to allow you to add 3 guys. And, we save a lot of money because you only can bring 3 guys up in September instead of 10. And, all those extra guys didn't do anything, and it led to lots of pitching changes and blah, 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 blah. Well, that's all BS. It was about saving money. But that's anti-prospect. That's really bad for prospects because lots of guys got their first major league chance as September call-ups and, got it. Yeah, maybe the games don't mean as much, but for some teams they do. And that was just a unfortunate decision in terms of prospect support, in my opinion.
No, I agree. I wasn't as into the depth of it as you are, understanding the finances and the repercussions. But for sure, as far as I mentioned, the 3-pitch rule, that was more to save time of game than it was anything else. But that's all rolled into it. So you mentioned the.
Well, anyway, before you move on, though, I want to talk about time of game. I mean, that's something that we've seen in the AFL. It started there, and now it's being implemented more in the minor leagues. I'm curious your opinion about it. What I've seen is that the pitch clock, people get used to it, and it doesn't seem to be a big issue at all, and it does save time in games. I think it's something that should probably be implemented in the majors. What do you think?
I do. I think they have to. I don't know if they're at the right time, though. I think they have to find the right time. I think they will, and I think that's probably. I've seen it in AAA last year, and I saw 2. It's kind of a silly story. But they play the Neil Diamond song in Worcester, and da da da, and they stop it, and the crowds keep singing it. And twice, in 2 days, it wasn't the same team. A couple of different weeks later, the pitcher waited at the back of the mound for the crowd to stop. The clock expired, and he got charged the ball. And while because he just waited for the crowd, to stop singing. So it was, So I think you have to, these are minor league umpires. That are getting graded, so they have to kind of go by the letter of the law, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it was just kind of it's like the second time it happened is like last time I was here, and sure enough, as I'm saying it, ball 1. It was wild. But anyway, no, I think there needs to be a clock. We started in the AFL, kind of question exactly how diligent some of the timekeepers were, but exactly when do you turn it off? But I think it's needed.
Yeah, people seem to get used to it. I mean, there's not a lot of guys during the game looking up at the clock. You kind of get used to the rhythm, and pitchers know they have to work quickly. Guys can't, step out of the box and adjust their batting gloves every pitch.
Right.
And and all the irritating things that slow the game down.
Yeah, no, and I think they will come up with the right time with runner on base, with runners not on base. I don't like the limiting throws over. I think some of those gimmicks aren't really necessary. I don't mind the bases being just a little bit bigger. I don't know that we've seen any repercussions of that yet.
No.
But have you caught any games when you in your minor league travels where they've legislating the shift? Because that's the big one for me.
No, I haven't. I've seen some automated balls and strikes games.
Right.
And I've watched. I've actually sat right behind home plate, and in spring training they were doing it at Roger Dean, and a couple of major league officials were right there. And between every inning, they're consulting with the umpires, trying to fine tune it. So the automated balls and strikes, I think, has real merit as well. For those who say it's going to take the umpires out of the game, that's not true. The umpires will have a lesser role, but a lot of folks think that's a good idea, myself included.
Yeah.
So that's the impact that I've seen more of the automated balls and strikes, which I think is going to come, and it should.
My concern there was with like in softball when you back shoulder the pitch and it's not hittable but it's a strike for like a millisecond. If the ball outside of the ball just clips the outside of the plate. But from what I've heard is it's not. There's going to be is it half the ball, a third of the ball? It can't be just that the tip of the ball clips the tip of the plate. There's going to be more of the ball has to cross the plate. So that kind of assuages my fears about the old wiffle ball type strikeouts where.
Well, and again, I'm sure that if this knob can be adjusted a little bit this way or that knob adjusted that way, right? You should be able to tune in on where it should be. And some of the human element of the game, of course, is good, but when you see calls that vary so widely between umpire and umpire, game to game, it's just not the way the game should be played, in my opinion.
I was listening, I think MLB Network Radio, either it was suggested or it's happening somewhere in that the umpire calls the game, but the other team gets X amount of challenges.
Yeah.
There's a robot umpire and the X amount of challenges where it defers. I don't know. Now we're getting a little too, either have it or don't, but I guess, I don't know. I'm just guessing that probably happened as a way to try to convince some people who are skeptical to go along with it. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll throw you a bone, a couple of challenges.
Yeah, but I'm not a basketball fan. I was taken aback by happened to catch some of the other game the other night just because for the show, for my RotoWire show.
Is one of the Boston teams in the finals or something?
I hear it. I'm not. I have not followed the game since the 2000s, so I'm not going to pretend that I'm rooting to Game 6. I know it's Game 6. I'm not. If they lose, if they win, and that's it. I'm not going to feign being a fan. I was a huge fan through like 2000, 2001. But there was a challenge, and I think the challenge in basketball now. Actually, I just had to shake my head. But,
they never played any rec games because if they played rec games, they know every play's a challenge.
Oh yeah. But
shut up.
Well, you're talking about your brother being taller than you. You're a tall guy.
Yeah,
so your brother's even tall.
He's like 6'5.5", 6'6".
I could box out back when I could actually do things like run a little bit, but the worst thing I could do is make a shot because then people think I could shoot, which I can't. So it's like shoot. You're wide open. I almost wanted to miss because if I made it, they'll think that dumb guy can keep shooting. But anyway, you talk about the Cardinals pitching. There's two guys that we can kind of home in on a little bit. Where'd you go, Brian? You're gone. We'll see if maybe we can get Brian back. Technical difficulties. Apologize for this. There we go. Just in time that I don't have to splice it. Cool. All right, so I'm going to ask you about two pitchers in the Cardinals organization, on the team. One old and one new. Okay. Jack Flaherty made his debut. I did not watch any of Flaherty's start. I want to go back and try to catch some out of curiosity. And then Matthew Liberatore, who started the other day. So start wherever you want. What did you see out of Flaherty, and is Liberatore up to stay?
Flaherty was supposed to pitch Wednesday night in AAA for his third tune-up. He was up to 60 pitches. He had shoulder problems in spring, and it was just making his debut. And I don't know if a lot of folks know, but major league players are not required to go on minor league rehab stints if they don't want to. They can demand to be activated when they're healthy, can demand to be activated at the major league level if they want. So Flaherty decided, hey, I want to help St. Louis now. So they said, okay, Jack, come on up. And I watched him on the postgame, last night talk about it. He said he was amped up too much. He was trying to throw the ball through Yadier Molina. And he's a veteran guy, but yet, he hadn't pitched in a long time. He's had a couple of years that were down from the standards that he set before. And I think he couldn't dial it back enough that he had some problems with walks and some balls that were hit. And he was not satisfied with his outing, obviously. And the Cardinals went on to lose the game, although that was, bullpen problems as much as it was his. But Flaherty's a guy that, the Cardinals really, really need, because you can't count on 40-year-old Adam Wainwright to lead your rotation forever. Miles Michaelis did a great job. Folks probably saw he just missed a no-hitter the other night. But then the back-end guys, Hudson and Matz, are, they're back-end guys, generally speaking. Matthew Liberatore, his backstory is interesting in that he was a first-rounder at Tampa Bay, and he was the guy that the Cardinals got when they traded Randy Arozarena. And when Arozarena, of course, went to Tampa Bay, he was a postseason sensation, really, really played exceptionally well, hasn't been as good since. But the Cardinals front office got raked over the coals over that trade. But Matthew Liberatore, he spent an entire year at AAA last year, had made the jump all the way from low Class A. So, the year that 2020, when the minor leagues didn't play, he basically skipped over high A and double A, and he took his lumps last year at AAA early on. But he pitched the first game of the doubleheader the other day. I think he allowed just 1 or 2 runs in 5 innings. No, shutout. I think he threw a shutout for 5 innings, come to think of it. And Liberatore is a guy who's going to be in the rotation for a long time. He's probably not going to be a frontliner, but he's a guy who definitely has, a major league career in front of him.
Yeah, I'm not selfishly asking because I have him in the XFL or anything, but hey, or maybe I am. I don't know.
It's funny. We got to talk about that. I haven't looked at your roster to see how many Red Sox guys are on there, but some guys play fantasy, or gals play fantasy, and they like to load them up, with their home team guys. I just went to look at my XFL roster because I couldn't remember. But I have 2 Cardinals on my 40-man roster, or is it 35?
40.
It's 40. Yeah, I have 2 Cardinals on my 40-man roster. One of them is Nolan Gorman, who I got in trade because one year Doug Dennis from Baseball HQ wanted Matthew Boyd. He was really excited about Matthew Boyd, and he gave me Nolan Gorman. It's like, okay, yeah, I'll take that trade. And then the other one that I drafted this year with the first overall pick is Jordan Walker, who we haven't talked about, but is a tremendous, tremendous talent. Just turned 20 years old, is at Double-A already, less than 2 years after being drafted.
Nice.
Hits for power, can run. The only question is where his home's going to be defensively. Probably he'll be a first baseman or maybe a corner outfielder rather than a third baseman. But Jordan Walker, if in a dynasty league, is a guy that you want to have, because I think he looks like he's going to be an impact player in the major leagues.
Yeah, you're saying that wasn't a homer pick, regardless of who had the first pick in this particular draft. He was in play, right?
Well, he's now, if you look at Baseball America, I think Jordan Walker's around 10th, overall in national prospects. And this particular league we're talking about, there are guys who are taken who are, college players. So there aren't very many players in the top 10 of the national prospect rankings who are available to draft in any given year. They were taken 2 years ago.
Yeah, I've got several Red Sox on my team. I drafted JD Martinez in our auction, but I had Tanner Houck, Jarren Duran, and Jeter Downs all drafted as minor leaguers. I don't feel that I jumped them. I just think that, I think we've talked about this. It was more of an awareness situation than it was I need to get a Red Sox guy on my roster. Now, having said that, I don't think you weren't with us in the latest when we just drafted a couple weeks ago in the Zoom. I was contemplating a second pick, and Jeter Downs would have been my drop. And I should have dropped Jeter Downs, but I didn't. I should, I should no longer be occupying a roster spot with Jeter Downs. But I'm what if he comes back? This isn't to say I'll drop him next time, because now I can drop Dalton Jeffries. But yeah.
Well, I kept JJ Bleday for that same reason, because he had a great Arizona Fall League last year. And then he came to this year and went back to came to camp this year and went back to being the same terrible hitter he was last year. So, I let him go. But, the homer picks, I think you and I know, I don't know if the listeners know, but in this also particular league, the XFL Experts Fantasy League, our friend Lar Michaels, who we talked about, there's an award that was created based on him and his love of particular players who happen to play in the Bay Area. And it's called the Kendall Graveman Award, which is given to the most blatant homer pick in the league in any given year. And I will say I've not won that yet, but Lar would have probably won his own award every year if he could have competed.
Yeah, no, I've been nominated, but I don't think I've taken it home yet. For like I said, Houck and Duran, et cetera. But we'll talk a little bit. We got a few minutes. Talk a little bit about. We don't have to talk about the XFL in particular, although we can. But keeper dynasty leagues. This is around the time where, well, actually, trades have been made already. But traditionally, this is around the time people start to make that decision: am I going for it, or do I rebuild a year? Now, the XFL, I'm not sure how you approach it, but it's to me, it's in between a keeper and a dynasty. If we define a dynasty as keep everybody ad nauseum, in a keeper, there's a lot of turnover. It's kind of in between.
It is. But, the fact is, what you're trying to do is in the big picture, you're trying to balance the long-term view. How many prospects can I keep? How can I stash? How good of prospects are there and still compete this year? So, you can often tell the strategies by the number of prospects that an owner keeps versus the number of contributing major leaguers. And I came into the year with half a dozen prospects, and, I've been able to play, but there have also been times where I've got, for example, right now, I've got a catcher on the IL, and I have to play 2.5 or 3 more weeks with a catcher on the IL because I don't have another catcher on the bench who's also not on the IL. So, that's the trade-off you make. If you're, buying for the, playing for the future and you get a key injury, you may not have anybody to bring up to replace them.
Yeah, too bad we can't trade between Tout and XFL, because I'm going to have a third catcher in Tout Wars, which I may try to pawn off over the weekend. But, right. So I'm in a position in this league where I didn't expect to flounder, but I didn't think I could be competing either. But, the fact that right now the leading point total is 115, and this is a league where the winner usually has 125 to 30. There's a lot of teams that are, air quote, in the running this year. Yeah. So it's kind of going to be an interesting year to see which of us want to go with it and make a few more moves to try to compete, and which of us, I've kind of had a good half season, but it's not gonna last. So I'm curious, but that kind of decision. So how do you make that decision? And whichever side you're on, how do you then go about approaching the rest of the league about a possible trade?
Well, in this particular league, players who are drafted as farm players, their salary only escalates at $3 per year versus everybody else. Their value is escalated at $5 per year. So there's a double value sort of for prospects for getting players while they're still in the minor leagues. And that +3, as we call it, status is transferable in trades. So what I do is sit down and assess, okay, can I win this year? No, I can't. And the question is, okay, how many +3 guys do I have that I want to keep next year? And what does my core look like for next year? And are there some open spots where I could make trades and trade off a Kyle Schwarber, say, who's $25, who I'm not going to keep next year, or a Dansby Swanson, or a Jack Flaherty if he comes back healthier, somebody like that I could trade for either a draft pick or a prospect. And the other thing in this league, because the rosters are restricted in terms of keepers, you have to decide, do I want to take on more prospects, or the value of the first round, the draft picks next year are very, very, very much higher, because that way you can trade for a future draft pick and not tie up a roster spot. So one of the things I often hold out for when I'm trying to trade this time of year is to try to get a first rounder, second rounder, a third rounder from a team next year in return for a prospect or for a player, an established major leaguer who can help them this year.
Yeah, I read into that where some of my farm players started their clock, and Gavin Lux a couple years ago that I normally wouldn't keep him, but I want to keep him just because I want to keep that low contract. So it kind of handcuffed me to the number of keepers I could have. And that's what it's kind of a bunch of like sort of in between rules. I think we're a little lucky in this league. I mean, there's some more difficult to trade with than others, but I think in general, we don't have the issues that you hear about as far as I need a fab sweetener or it has to be such a lopsided trade. So I think trading in this league is maybe a little bit easier, or maybe I'm just dealing with different people and I haven't found the hard people yet. But I think at least I found anyway that it's mostly congenial. I have trouble saying no. I have trouble in trades, but I'm more comfortable in this league than I am in some others anyway. Is that how you feel? Or
yeah, I think so. I mean, we know. I mean, when you're in a long-standing league, you kind of understand which guys are more open to discuss trades and which guys want to do it via email versus phone, and which guys want want this that. But you made an interesting point that I want to come back to, and that is you have to be careful though. I find that I also sometimes assume that because a guy's a +3 player, I should keep him. But there are times when even a player that you've got in the minor league, they're starting to outstrip their value, or you may be able to buy him back for a year or two cheaper anyway. Like, for example, I've got Austin Meadows now, and he's already up to $13. He'll be 16 next year. I'm going to look very carefully at whether I want to keep Austin Meadows for another year. I know Miguel Sano was the guy that I kind of learned my lesson the hard way on that. I was really proud I had Miguel Sano, who I think I acquired from our late friend Lar Michaels, by the way. But I kept Sano at least a year, maybe 2 years too long, because he had this wonderful contract. Well, the fact is he played inconsistently. He got hurt. He really didn't help my team. He hurt me, even though he had that wonderful cheap contract.
Yeah, I'll have to make that decision with Duran probably. His contract has started. Next year will be 7 units to keep him. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens, but then 10, 13. So that's the allure. But if he's just a quad A player, it's not worth keeping. So yeah, that's one of the.
And again, you realize if you really want him back, chances are you can buy him back in the draft for a comparable price. Yeah, he's not a +3 guy anymore, but maybe that's not a big deal.
Right. So yeah, these are some of the interesting decisions that we're all going to have to make. But
by the way, a month ago, do you recall who I picked with our first pick, and you raised a question as to maybe me knowing something?
I don't recall, but my memory's not good for these sorts of things. That's why they invented the internet. It was
Ryan Helsley.
Okay.
Yeah. I just had the feeling that he was going to get a chance to close games for St. Louis, so I picked him up. He's as a dollar guy, and he's doing a really good job for him.
Yeah, I mean, actually, we can touch on the closing scenario because they're a team that's the Cardinals. They kind of done what they said they were going to do. That Gallegos wasn't going to be the 1A, that he was going to close a lot of the time, but there will be scenarios where he doesn't, and they've kind of stuck to that. Or am I misreading this?
No, they have. And Helsley, they're for whatever reason he's had some health problems or something in the past, and they're being more careful about how they use him. But I mean, Helsley has a better stuff. He has a better offerings. He doesn't work so damn slow. But they're still probably going to share saves for a while. But I think Helsley's a guy in a dynasty league that you want to keep. Yeah,
I would think. Where Jordan Hicks, have you spoken anybody where he is, what we can expect if when he comes back?
Yeah, Jordan Hicks threw a bullpen yesterday in St. Louis and said that all of his pitches were working and he could have contributed in the big league game that night. The challenge with Jordan Hicks, of course, is we know he can throw 103. The question is, can he mix up enough offerings to be successful as a starting pitcher in the major leagues? Because that's what he wants. Jordan Hicks wants to be a starter. The problem, the Cardinals plucked him from high A to the major leagues. High A 1 year, major leagues the next spring because of his velocity, and that got everybody excited. But Jordan Hicks didn't have the time to develop his other pitches. Yeah, great. He was getting guys out in the Florida State League. Well, that's a little bit different than, against the Miami Marlins or the New York Mets. So, and then Hicks got a chance to start this year. He really wasn't very consistent, wasn't very good. And now the Cardinals have other options and they want him back. And the way to get him back more quickly, because he's been sitting out, is to put him in the bullpen. And that will help the St. Louis bullpen, even if he's not closing. And I think that's what will happen with Jordan Hicks. If he wants to start it, he may have to wait and try again next spring. And it, in a way, it kind of reminds me of the Alex Reyes story, who has probably now become a footnote. He had to have shoulder surgery earlier this year, and you just don't know whether we're ever going to see him again.
Yeah, well, we'll finish on kind of an up note. You mentioned Miles Michaelis near no-hitter the other night. I kind of had a bit of an epiphany, or not an epiphany, but a change of heart last night. I wrote about it in RotoWire today. When I hear about no-hitters, I'm just nose in the spreadsheet. They're all luck. Who cares? Miles Michaelis, it's just good defense. But I'll tell you, last night during Tyler Anderson's near no-no, I was rooting for him. I'm like, wow, this is different. This is fun. I mean, I think I need to, all right, yes, no-hitters have luck. Who cares? I think I need to say, who cares? They're fun. They're good for the game. So, I mean, what were you, how were you on your edge of your seat with Miles Michaelis? Well, Hey,
it was exciting. The only no-hitter I've ever seen in person was the non-no-hitter that Santana threw against the Cardinals at Shea back in whatever year it was, 2010 or 2014, whatever it was. But obviously that game I wasn't at in person either. I was watching Michaelis on TV. But no, I think it's exciting. And anytime anybody's on Twitter or on social media and word gets out there's a no-hitter in progress, in the late innings, I'll switch up whatever I'm watching and go over and watch it, because it does take quite an accomplishment to get those 27 outs without allowing a hit. And I think it's fun. And anybody who's a fan of the game, would want to see a no-hitter, would want to be in a no-hitter, I would think.
It's kind of a dumb story, but I used to do QA for MLB.com for their social media. And whenever someone threw a no-hitter, we'd have to work extra to get all the highlights out. So there were like 4 people in the country that were rooting against no-hitters. And those were the 4 of us that were on the clock that night, especially if it was a late game.
Well, it's more than just you guys too. It's the beat writers.
Oh, yes, exactly.
It's fun to sit in the press box and watch what happens when a game turns in the late innings or in extra innings, and you see all the guys going, "Oh my God, I got to rewrite my whole story. I got to start all." There's a lot of people behind the scenes who are rooting for quick games with decisive outcomes.
At least now you can put them on your computer and store it up to the last paragraph and then change it, as opposed to before we had to type it out. On the other hand, right now they're going out real time. Before it went to the newspaper, is a completely different story. So I'd like to thank you, Brian, for some time. Any players, anything else you want to mention before we let you go? Give another plug to your website.
Well, certainly the CardinalNation.com. If you're interested in the minor league system, we do have major league content as well. But we're really the experts on the St. Louis Cardinals system. And in terms of guys to watch, there's a catcher at AAA named Ivan Herrera. He's from Venezuela. He's only 21 years old, hitting 300 right now at AAA, OPS in the upper 700s, low 800s. And what we're seeing in St. Louis, this is Molina's last year. He's not playing regularly. When he does play, he's not performing at past levels. Andrew Kisner was sort of the next guy up, and he's showing that he's not handling it offensively. And Ivan Herrera is a guy that I wouldn't be surprised if we saw in the major leagues in the second half of this season. And he's a good shot to become the next St. Louis Cardinals catcher starting in 2023.
There, I'm glad I asked you, my friend, because that's a good note. Now I'm going to put a dollar bid on him in Tout Wars this weekend and stash him, but no, I don't think so. Well, I'd like to thank you again, Brian. I'd like to thank Jeff and the crew for letting me step in. And Jeff will be back with you next week. Check out his Twitter feed for all these. I don't know when Jeff became such a great photographer, although I think it's more about the scenery than the photographer in his case.
Yeah.
And he happened to catch a bunch of nice weather out there in Ireland. So,
some people buy the cameras that edit out the background.
Yeah.
In Jeff's case, I want to get the camera that edits out the guy in front and just look at the
scene. There we go. Exactly. But Jeff will be back with us, and I'm sure Brian will be talking soon. Hopefully it won't be to figure out what we need to do in the league when someone's not making moves or something of that nature. And enjoy the weekend, Father's Day, with your lad on Sunday, and enjoy the game, however it turns out.
Yeah, look for me in Fenway Park. I'll be the guy wearing red.
Oh, okay, yeah, that'll be easy enough, as opposed to the yellow uniforms that they're that are dotting the park now. Excellent. Thanks everybody for checking us out, and Clay and I will be back tomorrow with the two start pod.